Chapter 1.6, The Marxian Ideology. Let us now turn to sociology in Germany in the same span of time. In Germany, there was since the beginning a distinction between Marx and Weber and other sociologists. Thus, Karl Marx, 1818 to 1883, was himself deeply influenced by Hegel, that is 1770 to 1831, but was to later contradict him, while some disciples remained with Hegel's idea, others began to criticize his system. Hegel's philosophy emphasized the dialectic and idealism, of which the later was a second concept. Thus, dialectic itself provides a view of the world as well as an image of the world. Thus, the dialectic stresses the great importance of process, including those of conflict. Similarly, the image of idea of the world is also dynamic, while Marx accepted the use value of the dialectical process. He wanted to apply it in the study of economics rather than to leave it as a concept applied to ideas alone. Further, Hegel's idealism stressed the mind and ideas and not the material world. That is it is the mind that is significant, and that the mind and the psyche alone that exist. This is admittedly an extreme position, and Feuerbach tried to ameliorate it by saying that Hegel had overemphasized the consciousness and the spirit of a culture. In order to critique Hegel's, Feuerbach pointed out that it was society that projected God and put him in a hollowed position above themselves, getting separated or distanced from God himself, but nevertheless imbuing God with various uplifting attributes. Marx, though aware of Hegel's and Feuerbach's positions, was critical of these theories. For Marx, everything could be reduced to a material base, not to the mind and its processes. For Marx, capitalism was the problem which led to alienation, polarization, and revolution. And for the Marx, revolution by the proletariat was the answers to this evil. Marx's approach led him to the work of Ricardo and Smith, who used political economics, and it was these studies which finalized Marx's approach, which pointed out that the profit of the capitalistic was at the expenses of or exploitation of the wage earners or laborers. Thus, the surplus value was the very basics of exploitation and the root of the capitalistic system. In fact, the root of the capitalist system. In fact, the fast growth rate of the capitalist systems siphoned off profits lay large enough to invest into the economic system. Marxian ideology. There is a sociological theory within Marx's economic works, but Marx's radical ideas also fit into politics, and it is perhaps this reason that his ideas were questioned even as he had questioned Hegel and Feuerbach. That Marx's work was ideological created much opposition to it, especially by the scholars with conservative learning. It was Marx's polemical type that created problems, not simply the presence of ideology per se. Marx's sociology created many critics in its wake, and many works focused on the type of activist orientation that was part of his approach. There were other reasons that led to an eclipse of Marx's dialectical materialism, but his ideological aspect was a major area of difficulty for other sociologists and thinkers. This radical approach was not appreciated by the conservative sociologists, who had been bred to hate traces of anarchy in the social fabric, not just the disruptions of the Enlightenment or the Industrial Revolution. Instead, Marx was fueling through his studies a mood of hostility and aggression, which Marx felt would lead to a polarization of classes, and the poor, exploited proletariat would violently dispossess the capitalist class of their factories, industries, banks, and so on. Thereafter, a period of social harmony would begin in which there was a societal or community ownership of the means of production. There would be an end to exploitation of the have-nots by the haves. This thumbnail sketch indicates the kind of radical approach that Marx had was basically oriented to a violent overthrow of the exploiting capitalists by the exploited proletariat. Marx's emphasis, therefore, was on the exploitative or oppressive nature of capitalism. His theoretical analysis was aimed at removing this aspect of capitalism. This, according to Marx, meant a violent, bloody, and anarchic kind of overthrow of capitalism. Such a revolution would by itself remove the alienation and other negative aspects of the capitalist social formation. The next chapter is Weberian ideology.